let's visit with our friend David Cobb. It's been a little while. David joins us from CBSSports.com on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team at Mississippi Farm Bureau. Mr. Cobb, it's been a while. What's up, bud?
Hey, guys. Not much, just enjoying what's been a good, entertaining football season so far. So, yeah, all is well over here.
And David, I feel like a football season where we've got lots of questions still to be answered over the course of the next month. Outside of Clemson, I don't know that anybody that's in kind of the usual suspects category has eliminated themselves from consideration for the playoff. You do have some teams that are kind of hanging on a razor's edge, and the SEC is maybe down a little bit, but also wildly unpredictable outside of Georgia.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And even Georgia, to me, has not displayed the type of dominance that inspires confidence that, oh, hey, they're a lock for a three-peat. To me, they've been a little bit slow out of the gate. The offensive shakeup, both at coordinator and quarterback, seems to have caused that offense to miss a beat. Whereas, they've got what should be their best receiving core yet under Kirby Smart. They have the best tight end and probably the best pass catcher in college football right now in Brock Bowers. But that offense seems to be sputtering a little bit to this point. Ultimately not going to matter because the schedule is so easy. But if Georgia played in the SEC West, I would be projecting them to take a loss or two along the way. I mean, the West is just filled with landmines per usual, and there's not a dominant team in the West this year. Most people assumed it would be LSU or assumed it would be Alabama. Both those teams have already taken losses, and it's all up for grabs. So kind of a lackluster season for the SEC, but it makes things interesting because it feels like anybody can beat anybody else on a given Saturday.
All right, so do you believe LSU, Alabama, or Texas A&M, the only three teams that play in the West who do not have a conference loss? Arkansas lost to LSU, Auburn lost to A&M, Ole Miss lost to Bama, and State's lost twice to LSU and South Carolina. So does LSU, Alabama, or Texas A&M go undefeated in league play?
No way. I don't see it. It seems highly unlikely to me. LSU would be the team that I think has the best chance to do it. But we saw their flaws on full display in a home game. Lucky to beat Arkansas on Saturday. That pass defense is not up to snuff. I think there's some teams in the league that can continue to expose that the same way that KJ Jefferson did with a receiving core at Arkansas that I don't really think is in the top half of the league. And they were still able to put up a ton of yards and points on those guys. So I think everybody in the West comes out with at least one loss, including obviously the champion. And maybe we discounted Alabama a little too quickly. That they kind of showed us that they still care, that they can still take care of business when they want to. This past Saturday, but even with that, I still think the Crimson Tide take a conference loss at some point. There's just too many good teams in the SEC West to expect anybody to come out of it unscathed.
Hugh Freeze reminding fans at Auburn this week about their expectations being a little out of whack, and they are, But newsflash, Hugh, if you didn't know that going in, then you didn't really do your research. Can Auburn even punch with Georgia for a little while on Saturday in the Deep South's oldest rivalry?
I think Auburn's defense is good enough to frustrate Georgia. Auburn's going to really struggle to score points in this game, but their defense is stingy enough to make life difficult for reasons I already mentioned about some of Georgia's offensive struggles. I mean, we could look up at halftime, and it could possibly be a 10-3 ball game with Georgia ahead. I do think Georgia pulls away and wins somewhat comfortably because I just don't think that Auburn has the playmakers offensively, has the offensive line, and it doesn't have the quarterback either. This is the thing that sticks out to me about this SEC is how the league as a whole just whiffed on quarterbacks in the transfer portal. And that's so glaring at Auburn where they bring in Peyton Thorne, to compete with Robbie Ashford. I mean, a quarterback guru like Hugh Freeze, that's the best he could do in the portal. Meanwhile, Notre Dame is landing a player like Sam Hartman, and Oregon State lands DJU, and other programs around the country did fine with quarterbacks in the portal, but it seems like nobody in the SEC really got an A-plus caliber player at that position, and that, to me, is the biggest hindrance to what Auburn is trying to accomplish this year, because Hugh Freeze's best successes have come with really good quarterbacks, and he most certainly does not have one.
Yeah, and the only one that I might push back on, but I need to see a little bit more, is Devin Leary at Kentucky. You know, if he stays healthy and they continue to win, then we might look up at the end and be like, okay, yeah, they did a pretty good job there. But outside of that, I mean, you're talking about, what, Graham Mertz at Florida? You're talking about Peyton Thorne at Auburn? Last year, the SEC teams were far more successful in getting portal quarterbacks than what we've seen this year.
Yeah, and Alabama in particular sticks out as well. They end up obviously going with Ty Buckner out of the portal because of the pre-existing relationship there between him and Tommy Rees from Notre Dame. But think about where Alabama would be right now if they had poached a Drake May like they were rumored to have been trying to do, or if they had
gotten Sam Hartman.
Right, exactly. We're talking about an Alabama team that I think is number one in the country right now, if Sam Hartman is the quarterback. And the fact that Alabama couldn't strike in the portal and that Auburn struggled at quarter. In Florida, I mean, Graham Mertz, to his credit, has been better than expected to this point. But the quarterback play in the league on the whole has been lackluster. And I'm with you on Leary, but the jury is still out there. Their offense hasn't been all that explosive to this point. Kentucky's a bit of a mystery at this point because of how weak their schedule is. They're kind of like Ole Miss from last year. They don't play anybody in the first half of the season. They open SEC play with Vanderbilt this week, so it's hard to get a real read, until push comes to shove later in the season with Kentucky. Which, whenever Georgia and Tennessee come up, that's when we'll learn who Kentucky really is.
All right, David, we got like 2.5 minutes left. I want to try and hit on State and Ole Miss both. So Mississippi State gets really popped in their league opener against LSU 2 weeks ago. They show a ton of life offensively this past week. Big night against South Carolina, but the defense didn't stop anybody. They got Alabama rolling in this weekend. Is Mississippi State dead to you, or do you think they still got a chance?
No, because I think they demonstrated how potent they can be when they open up that offense a little bit. And I know the whole Barbet experiment is off to a bad start, but maybe there were some positive steps to take away from that South Carolina loss. And I don't know if it was, hey, we're playing from behind, we got to throw, or just a resignation that, hey, slinging the ball around a little bit is our strength. It's what most of these players were recruited for. It's what our quarterback set SEC records doing. Let's get out here and at least be entertaining, if nothing else. And the results were pretty decent. I mean, Spencer Rattler made some plays in that game that I don't know he could. You just got to tip your cap a little bit to him for South Carolina, and that was a hostile environment too. So I'm not willing to necessarily throw in the towel on Mississippi State getting bowl eligible for like the 92nd consecutive season here. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but they still got 2 non-conference games left that should be automatic dubs. And then if you can pick off Auburn or win the Egg Bowl or beat Kentucky or something, bowl eligibility is still very much on the table, and I think that's a good outcome for a first-time head coach in Zach Arnett.
And then with Ole Miss, they lose to Alabama a year ago, and it sends them into a tailspin for the final couple of weeks of the regular season. How do they avoid that this year, or do you think they do, with LSU coming in to Oxford this weekend and then Arkansas in town the next week?
Well, to me, it starts with getting the running game going, and it's not Quinshon Judkins' fault, I don't think. It's got to be the offensive line's fault to a certain degree. And then, okay, let's say the running game doesn't get going. Well, getting all these playmakers back is going to help the passing game, because I know Franklin and Prescorn are just getting back into it, but I don't think they're at 100%. And then, can Trey Harris get back in there? I'm not totally sure what Lane has said about him this week. But the point is, there's no way this passing game has been operating at peak efficiency with all of these key playmakers out injured. And as they get a little more continuity and consistency in the passing game, it should help mask whatever flaws continue to exist in the run game. I think the defense is better. I think it's a good defensive unit under Pete Golding. And they just got to get a little bit of a rhythm offensively. And I trust Lane. I've seen it time and time again that he can get the best out of an offense, even if it's not an optimum unit. And I think he'll do that.
David, always appreciate your time. Great catching up and look forward to talking to you again soon.
All righty. I appreciate